Good morning, everyone. Today I am going to be sharing with you guys how I put together a junk journal cover. This is going to be my first attempt at trying to do any kind of tutorial making, so hopefully everything kind of goes to plan. But as you can see, I've got my chipboard already measured and cut to a 9x7 cover with a 3-inch spine. That's pretty standard for me as far as the size goes. I have put those together with 2 strips of duct tape. I like using the duct tape instead of Tyvek because the duct tape already has the adhesive on it. It's just easier to use in general. Quicker process, things like that. So after I get this put together, the first thing that I like to do when using fabric is to find some padding to put down. Just a very thin layer. As you can see, it's super thin, but it makes all the difference in the world when using fabric to cover a hardcover junk journal. If you don't, this came from Michael's. My husband bought some candles from over there, and they use this to wrap the candles, and I am salvaging it for my junk journal covers. If you don't have this, you can also use a really lightweight batting that you would use for quilting or something like that. Sometimes I use the batting if I don't have this. And then I'm going to take a layer of this Scotch Permanent Spray Adhesive Super 77. This works great. You want to make sure you shake it up first. But I'm going to get a layer on here, and then I'm going to put this down and just make sure everything's good and flat here. And that's another thing about the Scotch spray is it dries super fast. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off all of the extra because we are going to be using our fabric to wrap the book. And I don't want additional bulk around the edges. Just want a little bit of padding underneath of the front and back covers and the spine to give it more of a cushy feeling when you're holding the journal. And bear with me while I get this cut off. I probably could have done this before starting, but I wanted everyone to get more of a step-by-step and to really understand what I was using and what was going on beforehand. Might be better if you have a smaller pair of scissors that can get a little bit closer to the chipboard, but I mean, I think for all our purposes this is gonna be just fine. And you can throw your extras away. I can't think of any good use for those small pieces. So this is the fabric that I'm going to be using. I am sure people who have watched my channel, I've probably used this fabric in junk journals that are on my channel before. I do get this from Joann Fabrics. It's a cosplay fabric. I think the name of the designer is Yaya Han. Something like that. I get this when it's on sale. It needs to be probably 50 to 60% off or more before I buy it, because I think the starting price for this fabric is around $30 a yard. But it's a gorgeous fabric. I love it. You can see that I went around the edges when I cut with some peeking shears. That's going to help keep your fabric from unraveling. And then you can see that I have cut this to where there's a healthy border around all four sides, because we want enough room to be able to fold this over. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did when applying the foam, and I'm going to spray a layer of this. And that will not go through the fabric if your fabric is a good quality, thick fabric. I don't know what it would do with a satin or a thin cotton. It might go through it, but this is a very durable, thick fabric. But we're just smushing this out, making sure everything is perfectly flat. No bumps, no air bubbles, nothing like that. So then my next step is going to be to take a hot glue gun, and I'm going to pull my corners down and hot glue them down right like this. I'm going to put a dab of glue here, 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 and here. And I'm going to try to fold these corners in to where they make a right angle. Let me show you up here. A right angle. All right. And then after you do that, you'll take your hot glue gun and tack down like this. And you'll see that it gives a nice corner here. So that'll be good. I can't use my hot glue gun over here because the cord won't stretch. So I will come back after hot gluing this down and show you what the end results look like when I'm finished. Okay, so I did manage to find an extension cord to plug my hot glue gun into so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. Please excuse my poor battered glue gun. It has been loved and used over the years quite a bit. So I've got my dab of glue, and then I'm making a right corner and pushing down. And that's secure. And we'll do all four corners before we move on to any of the straights. So we're doing the same process on all four corners, making sure to push that down really well. And again, my fabric is a very thick fabric, so that hot glue is not seeping through my fabric. And I'm not using a huge gob of glue either. I'm using just enough to tack these corners in to where they are secure. See, this one I think can use a little bit more. So I'm going to go in and put another dab in. Okay. So this is where things get a little bit tricky with maneuvering your fabric. And I'm going to start right here on my spine, because you want your glue to stay hot. You don't want it to get cold before you have the opportunity to tack your fabric down. So we're going to work in small sections until we move out to the corners. Okay. Now, I am going to come in here and I'm going to put glue on the top part of my flap. And I'm going to make sure that this is tucked and fold it over and pull. Pull on that fabric and make that corner tight. And then we can go under here and put a nice line of glue and pull and tack it down. come over here and do the same thing. I'm going to put glue on the top part of my flap. Not a lot, just enough. And I'm going to make sure that this is tucked. And I'm going to pull and push. And try to get these corners as tidy as I can. And then we'll go under where we don't have any glue here. Put some down, pull, and push. Now we got a nice line there with neat corners. So then I'll turn it, and I like to turn it that way when I go to grab my fabric and pull, I've got some resistance from the edge here. It helps me keep things nice and tight. So again, I'm going to start in the center, take my fabric and pull nice and tight, and then push. I'm going to add glue to the top of my flap over here. I'm going to tuck it, pull, and push down. Then I'm going to run my glue. I'm going to pull on this fabric nice and tight and push it down to secure it. And once you do this several times, you'll find that your covers are tighter, your corners are neater, and you just get better and better and better with it. At least that's how it went for me. Trial and error. And I use the hot glue rather than the wet glue, because with hot glue there's no waiting period. If you use a wet glue, and you can use a wet glue, but you'll want some clamps to run across the top to secure that fabric down until that glue has the chance to dry. Because if you don't, you're probably going to get some lifting. And that's definitely not what we want. So again, we're covering that the top part of the flap on the corner. I'm going to hold my finger here to tuck it, and I'm going to pull on it really good and tight. Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing over here. And trying not to scald yourself with the hot glue. Okay. And then we're going to run a healthy line of glue there. Pull tight and push it down. And you can see I've got a little bubble here. And I'm just going to put a little glue under there and push down, because that's going to be covered when we do the inside covers. So it's not even going to be important in the long run that that little bubble is there. So again, just want to really, yeah, there we go. Try to get these corners tidy. That's our first objective, is to make the tidy corners, because even if we use metal book corners or something, you're still going to want those corners to be as tidy as possible, because like I said, the fabric's thick. So when we put our book corners over it, it can be hard for the book covers to corners, I keep saying covers, I'm talking about corners, to close around the thickness of the fabric on top of bunchy corners. Right. All right. So now we have our covered journal, and it looks really nice. Our corners are probably about as neat as they can be with a really thick fabric. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to figure out if I want any kind of adornments on the outside that's going to need to be covered by what we put on the inside. And the answer to that is almost always yes. So I'm sure you know that I like using corset style spines quite a bit, especially when it comes to shabby chic, which is going to be the overall theme for this book. I get these off of Amazon. I think the correct search term is ring fasteners. And I use these to make my corset spines. Just trying to see how many I have because I prefer to have 5 on each side. And of course I only have 9 in that color. And I don't think 4 on each side is going to be enough. So I do have these that I also use quite a bit, and I think I found these with the search term leather rivets, and I really like these as well. 3, 4, 5, and 5. I literally have just enough. Okay, so 5 and 5. And if you decide to use these in yours, they are screwbacks. So we will need a screwdriver. I'm sure most people who think about, hey, I'm going to make a junk journal today, they don't say, let me grab my screwdriver. But yeah, it's a thing when you're using hardware. So we've got our Phillips. So placing these evenly to where it doesn't look like, you know, a big mess can be somewhat complicated, at least for me, because I don't like measuring things. Using measurements kind of is aggravating, but I do the best that I can. So I like for my first one to go in about 1/2 inch from the top and then 1/2 inch from the bottom. And then I want to find the middle point. So 0 to 8. So our middle point is going to be 4, right? And then I want to find my middle point 1 to 4, which is going to be 2. And of course that's right on the black tape. I wonder if there's something I can use. Yeah, put a little indentation there. So from 4 to 8 is going to be 6. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes, which is what we need. Let me turn off this hot glue gun so we don't burn the house down today. There we go. So I'm going to go in with my Big Bite, and my hole is going to be on 1/8 of an inch because I just don't think anything more than that is necessary. And I'm going to pop these holes in. And the Big Bite is great because it does go through everything pretty easily. Okay. I need to turn the book now. And I try to do one side first because after we get one side done, we can just run our ruler horizontally and we can line these up. And it's less measuring is what it boils down to. So I'm going to take one of my screws and I'm going to pop it through the inside. Turn my book. I'm going to find where that screw is coming out. And I'm going to take one of my ring fasteners and start to screw this in. And this can be trying, and the thicker everything is that the screw has to go through, the more trying it's going to be. Just try to be patient and eventually it will hook in. So when I'm doing these, I try to leave it so my rings are facing in. So I'll have another one over here and my ring will be facing in. We don't want our rings facing up like this. So I've got this one positioned correctly and I want to go in on the inside of the book. I'm going to hold my fingers around this rivet to keep it in place. And I am going to tighten this screw down until it will no longer turn. And we want that to be tight because tight is secure. Okay, and you can see it moved a little bit, but I think in the end it's going to be fine. And we're going to follow this process all the way up this side. Bear with me, it is a little bit of a slow process, but I love using hardware. I feel like it just adds so much extra personality to a journal. It kind of speaks to people. Then again, I really like flashy things, so that's, I'm sure, another. See, that one, that's a little too, it's not facing in enough is what it boils down to, so I need to try to fix that. I'm going to loosen that up just a little bit and hopefully yeah, I think that's good. So we're going to keep on going. We're going to put our screw through on the inside. I'm going to push this fabric down to expose a little bit more of the top of that screw. And I'm going to try to get the leather rivet to latch on, which it did. And then I'm going to hold this in place, turn it over, and tighten it down. Come on, screwdriver, be a friend today. Now, see, we're not holding that anymore, so. Oop, sorry. There we go. just keep on moving up the line. The reason I never made the tutorials before, I have tried a couple of times to make like maybe a little craft with me or something simple, and my phone stops recording. It's like 10 minutes in, it just decides, yeah, we're not doing this anymore, and it cuts off. So I'm hoping that I have the settings correct, because if I don't get the entire video on this, it's going to be sad. It's going to be really sad. And these, if I had enough, they're so much more simple because they don't screw in the back. They just kind of flatten out like, what are you doing, Tasha? Don't do that. They just flatten out. You spread them apart and flatten them down, and then you can use tape to secure them. And then put your paper on top, and it's good enough. Now, I always feel a little bit safer with the ones that screw in, because somebody would really have to tear something up to get one of these to fall out. You know, like, it would have to be pretty intentional. There are no accidents with these. See, and this is what I mean about being time consuming, is some of them just don't, they're not cooperative, but you've got to just keep working with it, because all the other ones went in. Shouldn't be this big of a deal. Let's try another one. I don't know if it's the leather rivet or if it's the user. Chances are it's the user. It's me. Alright, see that one latched on. There we go. And again, we want that to be left to right, not up and down. Hold it in place and tighten that screw. Okay. So, we've got our first row in, and you can tell they're evenly spaced, and they are, to the eye, relatively in line, which is exactly what we want. Alright, so we will come over, and it looks like we're about a 1/2 inch in. So from your gap here that I left for, you know, easy opening and closing, from the end of the screw to the gap is about a 1/2 inch. And we want that to be relatively the same over here. So, without being too precise about it, looks like our gap is almost at 4. 1/16 over the 4. So I'm going to go 4.5 and then over to this next dash, and I'm going to put my dot. And then the same thing here. We're going to go to the end of the screw. Measure over, make our dot, the end of the screw, make our dot, or you can turn around and do it the same way that we originally did it as well. If you feel more comfortable, come down 1/2 inch from the top, make your dot. Come up 1/2 inch from the bottom, make your dot. And then find the halfway points between each one. I prefer this way just because it's just a little bit quicker. anything that we can do to speed up the process just a little bit, because you don't want to get aggravated with the project just by making the cover. So we're going to come in, we're going to do the same thing as last time. We're going to use our big bite at 1/8 of an inch, and we're going to come in and pop all these holes through it. And the first time you do this, it's probably going to be scary, because you're going to be like, man, I don't want to ruin my fabric. What if I pop the hole in the wrong place? I mean, that's how I was with it, but like I said, learning by doing has been the best way for me. And at some point in time or another, we can all go get, more fabric, more chipboard, stuff like that. I'd much rather learn the skill and be successful with it than to stay in fear. So we put our screw in through the back, and we try to get this leather rivet to latch on to the screw, which it did. We hold that leather rivet in place on the front, and then we tighten the screw in the back. Hello, thank you. Right. We can straighten that out just a bit. Yep. Right. We are almost done with this portion. We just need to get in this last row, tighten everything down, and then we can start talking about closures. I generally install my closures as part of the cover making process, because whatever closure I use, I like for the whether it's sari silk or the little chiffon ribbon, just whatever I'm using, I like for that to be here underneath of the inside panel. I really like feeling like everything is secure. It's as secure as it can be. Excuse me. So the first few times that I did this, my husband helped me quite a bit. He did most of the measuring for me, because I am just really uncomfortable with measurements. I used to make mini albums, and the amount of measuring that you have to do for mini albums is ridiculous. And then I found junk journals, and it was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be like obsessed with this, because I just really don't even have to measure that much of anything. It's just creative fun. So yeah, it's been junk journals from there on out. I mean, my mom and my stepdad and stuff oftentimes will ask me to make them a mini album, and I don't have a problem with that, but to make them, to go in my Etsy shop or whatever, it's like, I would much rather just make some junk journals, honestly. They're just so much more fun. Now see, that one's, I can't turn it to get it facing the right direction. So again, I'm gonna, there we go. I'm gonna loosen this back up a little bit just enough for me to be able to twist that. And you know, I'm a little compulsive about things like that too. Minor little details that may or may not really make a difference. I don't know if it makes a difference whether those are in the wrong direction or not, because honestly, I've never left it to try. If it's not something that bothers you to leave it that way, it's worth a try. Because, I mean, you can always go back after we put our sari silk or whatever through these rings to lace up our corset. You can always go back and loosen it or tighten it or do whatever you need to do, as long as you make whatever adjustments you need to before doing your inside covers, because you really do want all of these screws and the duct tape and everything to be just completely hidden. Alright. Yay, we're finished with that part. So, you can see, right? Okay, so we want to figure out what we're going to thread through our rings. I have some white chiffon, and I think that might work a little bit, and then we want something thinner, so maybe some of this eyelash trim. I'm gonna give it a whirl and see how this goes. So I'm gonna pull off a pretty decent amount. And I don't cut my length until I figure out how much exactly I'm going to need. So I just take my end and unravel quite a bit for me to work with. And then after I know how much I'm going to be using, I'll cut it off. That way I don't have a bunch of extra. Okay. So we're going to thread this through just like a pair of shoes or a corset. Now this one we're going to skip and we're going to jump up to this one. We're going to skip this one and jump up to this one. And this is where you're really going to start to see your cover kind of come to life. It's going to start, you know, establishing a little bit of personality. And this is why I make my covers first. I always make my covers first because I want the inside of the journal to reflect how I built the outside of the journal. Okay, so I've got this much length left over to make my bow with, which I'm happy with. And then I'm going to just kind of fake run this through here. Right, so that's that. And then I'll have all of this extra. So yeah, we can cut this off here. And this is a frayed chiffon. And I actually got these off of Temu. I was really happy to see these there because everywhere else that I had looked, they were quite expensive. I mean, even Amazon, they're starting to get a little inflated over there with their pricing on things, especially the stuff that we know comes from China. I mean, we know as being consumers, you know, what comes from China and what doesn't. So I have definitely picked up a few things off the Temu app. And I would say overall, I'm pretty pleased. I'm pretty pleased with the quality of the items that I've picked up. I'm pleased with the overall shopping experience and stuff. So I guess if you haven't checked out Temu, it would be worth a look. All right, so I'm not going to tie that off yet because I also want to come in with this eyelash trim and do the same thing. Because while it does look really pretty the way that it is, I think it would just, add to it to do a little extra. A little extra is never a bad thing. Okay, and we're going to run this up the same way that we ran the chiffon through. I had thought about kind of putting a lace underneath of the corset, but the fabric was so thick, and then with the padding underneath, the screws were having a really hard time latching into the rivets anyway. And I thought if I added another layer of lace underneath of the corset, that it was just going to be even more complicated to try to get those rivets latched in. So I skipped that. But it'll be fine because we're going to use plenty of lace and stuff inside the journal. So it'll work out. I think the cover is going to be just gorgeous anyway. So I really enjoy the femininity of Shabby Chic. And so far, this cover has it. It's got it. Alright, so we've got everything we need now to do our bow. Oh, except one thing. I am going to be using one of these as my dangle. I picked these up from Hobby Lobby. Again, I generally pick these up when they're 50% off sale. But the Gilded Age timeline stuff, if you are a person who is into Shabby Chic, that's going to be a line that you're really going to enjoy using. And I always like to have a dangle of some kind on my spine. So I'm going to knot this. And then this has a really tiny eye. I'm going to use my jewelry cleanups. I just have a really simple little jewelry set of pliers and wire cutters and things because, wow, that is really sturdy. What can I do with this? Ooh, I have an idea. I'm going to feed this little jump ring through my eyelash trim because the eyelash trim is going to fit really easily rather than trying to pry that jump ring open. I'll just thread that right on there. Yeah. Right And we're going to tie our bow. And I don't want this to be lost in the bow. But I'm thinking maybe if we cut some of this extra off. And don't throw your extras away, because you can use those on tags and other little things in the book. So, I mean, yeah. I'm going to end up playing with this bow a little bit and trying to figure out a way to make this feather just a little bit more prominent than what it is. Because the bow's covering it up. I don't like that. Okay. One last thing for the cover. We're going to do some book corners. And I need to grab those. Okay. And I get these off of Amazon. The search term is book corners. And these have been wonderful. I love them. Love, love, love. Okay. And I'm gonna need some clamps. So I've got my heavy duty clamps. And for this, I am going to be using the Art Glitter Glue. And these have backs, so I'm going to open them up really good, like that. And I am going to put a little bit of the glue on the front, as well as on the back flap. And I am going to secure these to the book very tightly. I'm going to push this corner down as far as it'll go and clamp these back flaps down as tight as they will go. And then I'm going to put a clamp on there until that glue dries. And it won't have to stay very long. This glue is pretty good about dry time. Especially for things like this, where I know me, generally after I've finished doing a cover, I will likely take a break for the day and try to focus on other things that need to be done around the house or whatever. I was hoping that this video wasn't going to take entirely too long, but hopefully everyone who sees it has, come up with some ideas or has learned something, gotten some information that they can use out of it. I've seen a lot of tutorials here on YouTube that show so many different ways that people make their covers. There is no right or wrong. But I haven't seen any tutorials that go really in depth about, how they're attaching their hardware or things like that. But then again, I could just, not be looking in the right place. Alrighty guys, that's about it. if this video goes through the way that it should, if my phone has managed to record the entirety of the video, I plan to come back and do some more work with you guys in this journal. I am going to be using Stamparia's Rose Parfum paper pads and their little fabric selections, various pieces from the collection. And I'm going to be mixing that in with a digital kit from my shop that I named Rococo Rose. So yeah, here's to hoping everything works out, and hopefully I will see you all again very soon, and we'll be moving to the inside of the book. Thanks.